Well, hello friends, and welcome back to another Sunday video. Thank you for being here. Every Sunday, I go through the markets and I talk about setups and major things to watch out for the week ahead if you're going to be trading the foreign exchange market. So if you're new to my channel, do me a big favor before I get too far into this. Make sure to hit that like button down below if you want more Sunday videos, and also subscribe so that you get notifications from YouTube as to whenever I post these videos for future convenience. So with that said, we've got a whole bunch of stuff to look at this week. Should be very interesting. The dollar had a really strong week last week, with Friday sort of selling off a little bit of those gains. But I want to talk about going into this week what we could expect for the US dollar if you're going to be trading anything with USD in it, whether you're trading USD, JPY, USD CHF, or if you're trading the euro versus the dollar, the pound dollar. All of these with the USD in it could be heavily impacted by some of the stuff that's going on this week. So what is going on this week? Well, really quick, I do want to just pull up forexfactory.com, and I want to show you guys this because we got some interesting stuff coming into the news. You've got flash PMI. Sorry if you hear a little dangling noise. It's my cat running past me. So we have German numbers here coming out for PMI, which could be of interest, could be a little bit market moving for the euro. A lot of the euro heavily relies on Germany, as it is one of the more powerhouse economies over there in Europe. And then we've also got some interesting stuff in the second half of the week. We've got preliminary GDP for the US, which definitely could have a high impact on the dollar. And then also there's this big event going on with the Fed, which is the Jackson Hole, I don't know how to say that word, symposium, maybe. But basically they're going to be doing some more Fed meeting stuff. And usually when that happens, whenever that does occur, we look to see if they have any sort of thing to say on monetary policy, tightening, loosening of policy, things that could heavily impact the value of the US dollar and hence the US economy as a whole. Okay, so let's look at some of the different markets. We've got the dollar, like I mentioned, having a very strong last week. Here is a daily chart, by the way, and you can see, we had just green popping through the highs here, which brings me to sort of the main crux of this movement here on the dollar. The question here becomes, as we break through that 93 level, can we actually make and consistently hold these gains that we have recently seen happen on the US dollar? Because there's a huge upside here to the dollar, in my opinion. Because what you're talking about here is that if you break those highs, you're talking about a high of the 2021 price action that we have seen so far. And so with that said, when you have a breakout for the high of the year, that can sometimes lead to, multiple weeks of run up. Is that going to happen on the dollar? It is definitely going to depend this week on what they have to say over there at the Fed meeting. If they do talk about tightening monetary policy, possibly in the form of tapering sooner than expected, etc., that certainly could have dollar positive bullishness or dollar positive effect and make the currencies that have to do with the dollar go bullish. So I am personally bullish bias on the dollar. I think that we do have the potential to go higher, and I may be looking for more opportunities to get long in the dollar should we see a pullback. But granted, I am already long on USD pairs. If you guys know, inside of the Discord, I share all of the trades that I am taking. So let me go ahead and pull that up for you. So we'll go over here to my trades, and you can see any trades that I am taking. I closed out of that gold position last week, which was just a phenomenal move. Some of you guys might have seen the video I did on it. But I'm long on dollar Swiss. I have been for a little bit, and things have been going quite well on that. So things are going so far so good with the dollar thesis. We will see if that continues going into this week. Like I said, I think that things overall look good for the dollar. I think that tapering is probably coming within the near future, which could have a huge upward catalyst, upside for the dollar. So for me, like I said, bullish on the dollar. By the way, if you're not already inside of our group, we are doing a huge last chance sale, 40% off. This is not something we do very often, and it is something that we're sort of excited for because we are meeting a lot of new people and a lot of new community members are joining us. But if you're not already inside of the group and you would like to see the trades that I am taking, I share all of my trade alerts like I showed you just there in the journal. You can also join our chat room, everything going on, and meet traders from around the world. We've got weekly in-depth research that we share inside of our group. We have a couple different analysts from someone from Australia, some from Germany, some from the US here that share in-depth research with our members there. We also do live coaching webinars. So we do webinars throughout the week with Coach Joe Barreca from Australia. He is a great guy and shares all sorts of great content. And then, of course, you get access to all of my, strategy library stuff, and as well as some of our other analysts and our software library, which does include some of the tools that we have just released recently, like the Trend Scanner. So all that stuff, again, get 40% off. Today is your chance. If you've been meaning to join us, that is going to be the best shot that you have to get in a group for the cheapest. All the information is down below in the description. If you would like to join us this week for some of this crazy action we have been jumping in on recently, like I said, we've been having a great turnout on some of the trades. I went long on gold, closed out of gold here towards the end of last week. So I ended up taking profits there. If you guys remember, I bought at 1703 and then closed out just around 1780, 1785, somewhere in that region. So not a bad move at all. And that's, sort of a bit counter trend, but I talked about this recently. So gold bounced off of the lows of the year. And as soon as it started showing some demand, I actually jumped into a position there, like I said, around 1703, and then rode that thing right on up. Now, the thing is with gold, I was not superly over, I'm not necessarily confident that we're going to see a major, break of the uptrend or anything. I was looking more for just a bounce play. And sure enough, that's exactly what we got. In terms of the gold market, we do have this lower high sort of contesting situation where you have, this market where you have got lower highs coming in overall. Until that starts to really break for me with gold, I am sort of just passive, if not neutral at the current moment. So don't have a huge opinion on that one. But going into this week, a couple levels to consider. If you are watching gold, let's take a look at it. I do like this idea here. You have resistance up there at that double top where we saw a lot of rejection. Up there at 1830, price got a little bit of interest and then sold off. And truthfully, if I'm being honest with you guys, I thought we were going to be able to break out of here. We never saw that. We saw the rejection. And like I said, I was able to catch the bounce back, but it was way lower than I expected to get to buy gold. I actually also picked up gold in my longer term, portfolio as a buy. So I bought some gold. So I'm hoping to see if we can get some continuation longer term to the upside, but just a little insight there for you. Okay, so next one we're going to take a look at is the euro. The euro should be interesting to watch this week. You do have this area here. The question is, we did break through the lows of the year. That's a huge deal for anybody watching the euro from a technical analysis standpoint. You have to understand that what was demand is now going to be tested this week as potential resistance. Like I said, you got to break underneath the lows. And now the question just becomes, is this thing just going to sell off into this week? Again, very much dependent on whether or not the US dollar gets strong due to the Fed meeting that we are going to have. So that is a highlight note for anybody watching the US dollar currency pairs this week. We drop it down to the 4-hour chart. You can see it a little bit cleaner. There's your level right there at 1.171 and 1.17. You had a lot of demand coming into this market until sort of towards the end of the week, you had this fake out to the upside and a breakdown. So for me, the retest may be a sell if you're more of an intraday or day trader. But for me right now, I'm not super interested in just jumping into the euro. I would like to see this thing truthfully. I'd like to see it get a little bit more broken to the downside. And then I wouldn't mind looking for the retest, right? Being a little bit more patient on this. Personally, I can't sell just yet, just because we haven't really decisively closed, under 1.17. I would like to see a nice, red candle there, just holding underneath that weakness there before looking to jump into shorts myself. But I do like EURUSD to the short side overall, and I am and have been bearish on this pair. Next up is going to be the pound. The pound is very, very interesting. We saw a dramatic sell-off of the pound last week in response to everything going on that has been fairly risk-off biased. What do I mean by risk-off? If you're a new trader, risk-off basically means that people are taking their risk off of the table across markets. Things like the pound are considered fairly risky. Think about it. Would you rather invest in the US, which is this ginormous, massive economy, or the UK? And there's nothing, I'm not saying anything bad about the UK. I'm just saying from a stability standpoint, the US is much larger, much more diverse, and much, bigger. So you have that sort of move into a risk-off environment recently in response to things like the Afghanistan situation. You have the Delta variant becoming a increasing concern. So a move into risk off means that people are selling the pound in favor of the US dollar at this time, or at least that seems to be the story. So going into this week, I expect most likely path of least resistance is likely just to continue that sort of trend of selling into this. Every rally seems to get sold into. So perhaps we can look to be a part of that. That is, like I said, my opinion there is that we do see more downside on the pound dollar. I'd like to see, just like we talked about with the Euro USD, I'd like to see if we can break underneath some demand here, just to get some fresh sellers maybe rushing in. Something like this, right? Some form of breakout to the downside and then looking for retests could be interesting. Maybe middle of the week, something like that. But again, watch for this level here at 1.36. That seems to be the key zone if you're going to be watching the pound going into this week. If you think it's bullish, maybe you look for some opportunities, lower time frames, you look for some price action rejection of this level, something like that. For the bullish perspective, if you see something like this, breakout and continuation, that could be great to look for. But again, for me, I am bearish biased on most things against the US dollar at this time. So next up, we'll take a look at something like USD JPY. This is an interesting one because you have two risk aversion currencies. You have the dollar, of course, and you have the yen. Both of these are considered safe havens, places that people invest their money when they are concerned about the future of markets. And what you'll see here is that that's why we sort of see this market just chopping back and forth, not really decisively going anywhere. That is probably, like I said, because people are buying both of these currencies, so one is not being dominantly bought against the other. Compared to, like I just said, pound dollar, you have this thing being dominantly sold into because people are selling the pound, buying the dollar, just at a rapid pace. Dollar yen, not so clear. You've got some very mixed opinion here. If I'm watching this thing personally, I would say, keep eyes on some of these key levels. We are still in this range that we've marked for the last few weeks. If we can break above 110.6, you may see a move back to the top, right? So if dollar strength comes in due to something from the Fed this week, right, that could very well happen. And in that case, maybe we see some dollar yen strength to the upside continue. Of course, we also have to talk about dollar Swiss franc. I am long on this trade. This one, I basically bought the 50% retracement. I was a bit early to the trade, but still, nonetheless, I'm still in it. So like I said, I jumped in there on the long side just around here, shared that with members inside of our Discord. And since then, things have been running beautifully. So we'll see. My goal here is to see if we can get a run back up to the previous high. I would love to see that. And at that point, I'd be looking to sort of aggressively trail my stops further. And then, longer term, I think that we do have the potential to, at some point in the next, 6 months to a year, maybe we see a run back up to the previous high to sort of tag those high of year levels up there at 94.5. So that is my thoughts on dollar Swiss. I am bullish on this pair, looking for upside. And this is a trade that I am taking inside of the group, like I said, mostly on those swing trade side of things that I usually stick to. So I'm looking for a swing to the upside. Like I said, I've already in this trade, so I am in profit at this point. Would love to see this thing continue. We'll see if we can get a breakout going into this week. In fact, actually, if we look at the 1 hour chart, we actually were forming a little bit of a very, very ugly bullish flag here. You sort of have this wedge formation. And for me, just waiting to see going into this week, can we get some form of a breakout to the upside? And can we see that follow through that I'm looking for? We'll see. If not, I do have my stop loss at break even. So the worst case scenario is that price breaks to the downside and I am out for break even. So not a bad spot to be in as a trader. Definitely worst cases to be in for sure. So not complaining one bit. Let's take a look next at AUD USD. We'll take a look at the Aussie. This one has been really, really beaten down, and this completely makes sense if you follow fundamental analysis. This thing is so bearish from so many levels. You've got the pandemic situation, which is very much hurting Australia right now with their lockdowns. You've got a general sentiment of risk off, meaning people are more interested in buying the dollar for that safe haven aspect and selling riskier economies like Australia. So this thing fundamentally to me is bearish. I can't sell it at these levels, but if there was a retest, absolutely could look to get short on the Aussie dollar. Of course, levels of interest include things like 0.732. And really that's pretty much it. If you're getting very aggressive, there may be resistance there at 72.5. But again, for the most part, this thing is super bearish. You look at all the trend lines and moving averages, and everything just looks so bearish on this pair. For me, like I said, the biggest interest would be a retracement up to levels where we could look to try and get short and continue the downtrend. And again, there might be people who say, Nick, doesn't it seem like it's too far sold off? Like, isn't it time to buy? But truthfully, I just don't like to go against the trend. Generally, the trend has a lot of strength and can really, really keep going. So instead of assuming that it's over and that it's time to buy here, maybe that works. Maybe that could be great. But in most cases for me, watching this thing for several weeks, that has not been the case. There's been several instances where it looks too sold off, and then sure enough, we wake up the next day and the market has sold off another 100 pips. So, this market is crazy to the downside right now. And for me, not really willing to sort of go counter trend on this at this time. So, okay. Well, next we'll take a look at NZD USD. This thing is equally bearish. I used to be more bullish on NZD than Aussie, but recently with their situation with the Delta variant, excuse me, with their situation with the Delta variant and their sort of pullback on monetary policy, I am very much not a fan of the NZD right now. So the NZD, the New Zealand, the Bank of New Zealand came out and basically said, we were planning to raise rates, but essentially we are planning now not to do that in response to some of the rising cases of Delta variant situation stuff in New Zealand. So with that said, they came out and changed their monetary decision where they were planning to raise rates. And then they said, actually, we're going to hold rates at where they were at. And that was incredibly bearish. We saw a massive decline. And again, this is the power of fundamentals. Is once fundamental analysis or fundamentals really play out, once you get that news, it has the potential to move markets dramatically, way more than technicals. You can see there's 200 pips to the downside in a matter of several hours, but still, technical analysis can get you somewhere. But truthfully, it's the fundamentals that are the true driving force of the market. So again, when I look at New Zealand, like I said, NZD USD, this thing is mostly bearish, especially in response to the risk off sentiment that we've talked about several times on this video. We're seeing lower highs on this market. The trend lines, the moving averages here are still a bit, mixed, but I would imagine that soon we should see sort of this thing continue to roll over and all that moving average start to continue lower. So I think that there is a bigger pullback here on the NZD coming. Like I said, if we draw from the lows of 2020 up to the highs of 2021, you can see that we are not even at the 38.2. Longer term, I think we have potential to come on down to 0.67 and maybe even 0.65 here in the next several weeks to months. So that's my thoughts on the NZD USD. I think that the bullish trend, at least for now, is going to have to be on pause. With that said, that is going to do it for most of the pairs, but let me see if there's anything else that I can look at. I would also like to look at the S&P 500. We got a little bit of a dip just before price, of course, rallied right on back. This thing seems to be the never-ending bullish trend. That's an example of a beautiful, strong uptrend. And until that breaks, I would say that the bullish thesis is just remaining, right? We do have a lot of situations in the world, but truthfully, there are always situations in the world. And that, sometimes can be confusing to people. They say, well, why is the stock market still going up? Yet you have situations like Afghanistan and et cetera, right? Well, the U.S. stock market is a resilient place. You have to think investors, they have to put their money somewhere, and U.S. stocks just seem to continuously be the winning bet. Will that always be the case? Probably not. In fact, almost inevitably not. But for now, that seems to be the story, and the trend seems to be in favor of the bulls here big time. So maybe there's some dips, but it does seem like we had a dip that was very quickly attacked by the bulls. We'll see if that continues going into this week. If you do see a break of this level, things could start to get interesting. So watch the 50 MA if you're watching the S&P 500, because look at this thing every time, just tagging it and going. But if we see a break of that structure, there may be opportunities to look for some risk off plays. Remember that when the stock market is rising, usually that is a lean towards risk on. And when the stock market is falling, that is usually a risk off sentiment. So things to consider and things to know. All markets talk to each other in some way or another. With that said, guys, I do want to say one more time, if you've been meaning to join our group and you would like to, this is your chance. 40% off. That's almost half off of our entire membership group. You get access to so many things, and it's a one-time fee. So if you've been meaning to join us, like I said, it's all the trade alerts being shared, chat room access, in-depth research, live coaching webinars that we do throughout the week with Coach Joe, and of course, our strategy and software for MT4 library. So get it down below in the description if you would like to. Thank you guys very much for being here today. Happy Sunday and have a great trading week. Please stay safe in all this crazy volatility, and we will see you back next time.